Live. Hello, Melike. Hello, everyone. We are back again with another conversation with an amazing woman today. In 5 seconds, we are gonna send her a request, invitation, but I need to share with you that our connection can be a little bit worse as soon as we invite her. It happens. We have some issues about the connection today. So yes, I wanted to inform you about this. And now we are gonna invite Yomi. Yes. Just send her an invitation to request, and she will probably be here in 5 seconds.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, she is. Hi, Yomi. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm so excited. I'm so happy to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
We are going to wait for some more people to join in. Then we will start probably in 5 minutes. So how are you? And have you been able to go back to the normal life since the lockdown was over? How's everything?
Yeah, it's been fine. I'm getting there. I'm still a bit overwhelmed to be back out and like doing things. It's a bit like much at the moment. So I'm like trying to get back into it. But yeah, I feel like a lot's happened all at once and I'm just like hit the ground running. But yeah, I still need a bit of time to relax.
Yes. I think we all need have some break. By the way, I mean, yes. So, okay, we can start if you are ready, because I really want our audience to hear your story, your accomplishments. I mean, I'm so excited. So I'm starting if you are ready. Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Ecem and I am one of the co-founder of luxury sleepwear brand Bocan. And as you know, in the honor of Women's History Month during last March, we started to interview some inspirational women who are at the peak of their careers. After talking to some incredible female entrepreneurs like Chloe Pierre, Sonia Barlow, Angelica Malin, Elise Blackshaw, we decided to keep hosting more inspirational role models because we are all about empowering and uplifting women. So we want to use our platform to support them and inspire the other women. So today I'm very excited for you to meet British journalist and best-selling co-author Yomi Adegoke. So let me introduce her briefly. Adegoke is a British journalist who writes about the intersection of race, feminism, and popular culture, along with being a columnist for the Guardian and British Vogue and others. She has also co-written several books, including Slay in Your Lane, The Black Girl Bible, and Loud Black Girls, 20 Black Women Writers Ask What's Next. So thank you so much again, Yomi, for accepting our invitation.
Thanks for having
me. Could you tell us a bit more about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Thank you so much for such a lovely introduction. As you said, I'm a journalist and columnist. I do far more columns these days than I do sort of long form journalistic pieces, but I write a lot about, I suppose, things that people don't always necessarily take seriously. So I write a lot about reality TV, but I take it very seriously. Like I'm very passionate about reality TV. So I do a column in that for The Guardian. I write about general day-to-day stuff, whatever kind of pops into my mind for British Vogue. I've been doing those two columns for about a year. As you mentioned, I co-write a lot of books with my best friend, Elizabeth Uvebenene. We've got a kids book coming out in November, called the Offline Diaries, which is about kind of the toxicity of the internet, but kind of looking at it from a middle grade perspective. So kids that are around age 8 to 12. I don't know any children between the age.
Yes, it's
Yeah, I don't.
very interesting actually.
I
Yes.
had to like try. I'm so sorry. Like I've set myself up in my room.
No,
My ring light keeps moving. But yeah, I don't know any kids, so that was quite a process trying to understand what 11-year-olds care about, who they're interested in. So yeah, but most of my writing at the core of it and the work I produce is, I would say diversity, but I'd say more what is authentic to me. And I am a Black woman and I am from a Black area. And there are certain stories that, at least when I was growing up, weren't necessarily represented. I didn't necessarily go into it feeling like I need to tell these stories because I'm trying to be diverse. It was just more, I want to talk about things that my friends are interested in, what I'm interested in. And yeah, through that, I guess my writing's always been about diversity and stories that are slightly on the margins.
yes, and also I started to read your book, Slay in Your Lay. Yeah, really. I mean, it now still I'm reading, but it really gave me different aspects to be able to understand actually, because you know we all know the normal, I mean, stuff from the media. I don't know, but this, I mean, you know, you and your best friend Elizabeth,
Yeah.
you two share your experiences, your stories. I mean, really, I cannot wait to keep reading and finish. And I highly recommend everyone, actually.
Thank you.
Yes. And Yomi, you are paving the way for representation of issues concerning women, especially Black women, in the media, which we think is amazing. And what kind of changes have you gone through in a positive way since you first started your career compared to now?
It's a good question. There have been loads of changes, actually. I think when I first started out, I honestly knew of maybe, honestly, 3 Black female journalists that were writing regularly for mainstream publications. Maybe 3, maybe 4. And most of them were like a good 10 years older than me. They all were doing incredible work, but there were so few of them. And I feel like now there are countless. Like there are so many Black women in the media landscape in the UK. Because I think before as well, most of the Black female writers I was across were in America. There were so few in the UK. So I feel like now that's really changed. I've seen so much like growth in terms of just diversity of storytelling and understanding that Black women's stories aren't the same. So giving us space to talk about anything. Like my columns aren't, usually they're not necessarily about race, they're not about feminism, but by virtue of my identity as a Black woman, they always have a lens of like, they're through my perspective, but they're not, it's not like I'm allowed to write about those things. Whereas when I was first starting out, I think it was like, it would be something like, okay, Beyonce has released an album and we need like an opinion on it, and you're the one Black girl that we know. So they'd kind of like drag me onto the desk and be like, quickly write an opinion piece on something to do with Beyonce. I feel like now it's a bit more broad. There's an understanding that we have like white people, we have a multitude of things that we want to talk about, that we want to write about, that aren't always connected to our identity. And I think like just personally, I've definitely grown in confidence. Like the internet is a very toxic place. Especially Twitter. Instagram's toxic in its own way, but I prefer Instagram, to be honest. At least there's like lots of pretty images to distract you, whereas Twitter is just toxic. And I think when I first was like on it and writing, I was really anxious about what I'd say and how it would be interpreted, and it was very easy to kind of be victim of like racist trolls and sexist trolls. Whereas now it's not like that can't happen anymore. It's still a thing, but now I've just removed myself from that space, and I just write what I'm writing and I publish it, and I hope it reaches the people that I want it to reach. But I'm not as fussed about feeling like, I guess before I didn't have a big platform, so I felt like if I don't tweet this piece, no one's going to read it. Whereas I've reached a point in my career now where I don't really tweet. I mean, I do sometimes, but I'm not really on Twitter a lot. And I know that I've got a platform, which means that people read it anyway. So I feel less anxious about having to be in toxic, like, online spaces.
Yeah. And you are one of the most inspirational characters that keeps bringing important issues into the public eye. For instance, in your book, Slay in Your Lane explores topics including work, education, money, dating, health, and the representation of black women throughout the media.
Right.
If you could choose one thing to accelerate change for inclusion and more diverse, fair representation in the media and in journalism, what would it be?
One thing, I would say, yeah, if I had to only choose one, I'd probably say it would be reevaluating who we let write and who we give platforms within the media to, and why. Because I think even when we are trying to be diverse, there are still limits to that, because diversity is not just about race. It's not just about sex, gender. It's about, you know, disability, sexual identity. That there are a myriad of ways in which a person can deviate from, you know, the norm, so to speak. So I feel as though one of the ways that we could really create a better sense of diversity would be when it comes to employing people to write for platforms or to have columns, making sure that we're not going into it with the mindset of, okay, if we have to get a black person, then they're going to be a black person that went to this uni or went to this private school. Because another element of diversity, which is often ignored, is class. You know, class is a huge issue in the UK, but simultaneously something we always talk about it, but we never talk about it, not in a meaningful sense. And I feel that in my mind, when it comes to like diversity of race, sex, ability, XYZ, there's no point trying to be diverse if it means that all those people that you hire are then going to be only a particular type of person still. So if you're going to hire black people, they still all went to private school. If you're going to hire women, they all still went to private school. I feel like it's important that we have a diversity that also reflects economic background, because I feel like so often when we do have the conversation around diversity, we ignore that there are so many excellent writers that maybe couldn't afford to go to university or couldn't exercise. Yeah. So you need to just take a more talent first and ability first approach, rather than it being like, oh, this person, I recognize that uni, I went there, I went to that private school, you should come and work for me. Do you know what I mean? I think that's probably one thing that's ignored a bit.
Yeah, definitely. And when it comes to your other book, Loud Black Girls, a key message you are trying to get across is hope, breaking through barriers, and still succeeding. What challenges have you faced in your career so far, and how did you overcome them? I'm sure there are many things you overcome and accomplished in your story.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think with Loud Black Girls, that was an anthology where we got 20 different women to contribute to our book and kind of you know, write about their, not even necessarily experiences, but just things that they were interested in, or things that resonated with them. And you know, it was such a different set of essays, but the kind of overwhelming or prevailing theme was hope. So there was so much hope, there was so much optimism, there was so much joy. And I think in terms of, sorry, could you ask the question again, because I just want to make sure I answer it correctly.
What challenges have you faced in your career so far, and how did you overcome that?
Okay, thank you, because I thought I'm going on a tangent here. So I think optimism is a real important thing, and I think in terms of my career, I feel like I've always felt very optimistic and lucky. I feel like I wake up honestly almost every day and feel like I can't believe that I get to do what I do and be paid for it. It feels like it is a true privilege to be able to get up and write, which I would do for free, because I love it. So all the challenges I've had, I almost feel not grateful to have had them, but I'm very like aware that I work in an industry, which is a real privilege to be in anyway. But I'd say one of the biggest barriers, I suppose, I've experienced has been being taken seriously. It's difficult, I think, as a woman and a Black woman and a young Black woman to
Yes.
be taken seriously, full stop. But then if you have a personality like mine, which is quite bubbly, and I'm not a serious person, and I love fun, and I like to be myself, and myself isn't a serious person. So I like to do my serious columns and write about issues, but then also in the same breath tweet about rubbish and, you know, make jokes and not be serious. So I think for a long time I kind of struggled with the, you know, coherence of those two identities. Like, you know, I felt that because I was young and I was Black and I was a woman, I had to be extra kind of put together to make it clear that like I could be respected, I could be taken seriously. So that meant me kind of often almost sidelining a part of myself, which was not serious at all. But now I think I've reached a point in my career where I think most people know that I'm like this. Like most people know that I'm not a massively serious person all the time.
You have your own style.
Right. Exactly that. I have my own style, I do my own thing, and I might write for like stuffy broadsheets, like, you know, like I obviously write for the Guardian and stuff, but I feel like they hired me to be a columnist because they appreciated that I was slightly different. And I think there's a lot more leniency, I think, for older white men to kind of be a bit more jovial, so to speak, or a bit more like, yeah, I guess like just fun in terms of how they conduct themselves. Whereas with me, I felt like, oh God, if I'm myself, then people are going to be like, she's just this like flippant bit of skirt because I'm young and I'm bubbly. Whereas now I'm just like, I've paid my dues, I've got my like accolades and credit, and I know that regardless of how silly I can be, that doesn't take away from that. So I've lent into just being entirely myself as my career's progressed, for sure.
Yes, but I think it's a really nice trick. Not nice trick, but nice side of you. You know how to handle all those, I don't know, barriers or challenges. And my mom always tells me that, Ejam, don't take seriously everything. You know, I mean, just have fun. I mean, it's just a journey. I mean,
definitely right. 100%. Life is short. None of us get out alive, so it's just like you might as well enjoy it whilst you're here, enjoy the ride. And I think I try not to take things too seriously. And I think if I did, then because there can be so much negativity, especially when I was working at Channel 4 News, which is like hard news, serious stuff. And I felt like I was working yeah, I guess, oh God, the period I was working in as well, like 2014 or 2015 to like maybe 17, 18. And the news then, it's like I saw obviously Brexit, Trump, like all these things. And it's like, you know what I mean? So I kind of have to have faith to be to kind of not be as immersed in the like severity of the ongoing situations, because I was like, if I'm just constantly in that headspace, I'm just gonna be depressed. So yeah, I think it's important to
it's just changing mindset, maybe
exactly,
a little bit.
Space for like levity, I think.
Yes. So, and you have now written several books with your best friend Elizabeth. You are friends since college years, I think, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. What made you want to co-author rather than write alone?
What made me what? Sorry.
What made you want to co-author rather than write alone?
So that was Elizabeth's idea, actually. So it was Elizabeth's idea to write the book. She had been, you know, she's like we have very different approaches, I think, to like life, really. And one thing I love about Elizabeth is she's very big on like learning, and I think I'm quite big on learning as well, but she's like very practical with it. Like she'll go and she'll be like, I'm gonna buy this book because I feel like it's gonna teach me about this thing, this area I want to change in my life. So she was reading all these self-help books that were like basically written by middle-class white women, and they were like, yeah, you know, Lean In, Thrive, Girl Boss, all these books. And you know what, these books get a bad rap. Like people are like, oh, they're not inclusive and they don't represent me. And that's fair to an extent, but at the same time, they are white women and they are middle-class women and they're writing to their experience. And I think that's fine. I don't think everything has to speak to everyone because it's not realistic. But those books did have shortcomings because obviously they didn't speak to Black women's experiences. So rather than I think being like those books are shit, she was more like these books are good, but there needs to be more books that speak to the specificities of other women's experiences. So she was like, we need a book that talks to Black women, and we need a book that talks to Black British women, because normally when we're talking about racism, we're talking about racism and we focus on Black men. And then when we talk about sexism, we focus on white women. And then even when we talk about misogynoir, which, you know, is the negative, what's the word, like way Black women are specifically like oppressed and the negative like things that come with that. We're talking about African American women. So she was like, we need something that focuses on Black British women specifically and the specificity of that experience. So she was like, I've got this idea for a book. It's kind of like, then we were like, it's the Black Lean In, and by Sheryl Sandberg. And she was like, you know, do you want to write this? And I was like, that's an amazing idea. Couldn't believe it hadn't been done. And then I said, you know, we should write it together, because Elizabeth's also a great writer, but Elizabeth's also a great marketing mind. So we were like, yeah, let's just do it together. And I think that was really important because it shows how somebody else can like see something in you, because she felt that I would be the person to write the book, but I also felt she was the person to write the book, and we both had confidence in each other, and then ended up doing it and creating this like phenomenon. But also I think it speaks to like sisterhood in a way of like not being selfish with ideas, because Elizabeth didn't have to tell me that. Or she could have said, you have to pay me to give you, like, you know, you're a good writer, go and do this thing, and you know the rest is history.
Yeah, and I think you two complete each other. I think this is the nice part. I mean,
definitely, yeah.
So, as well as having a number of published books under your belt, you also contribute to many leading publications.
I do.
Yeah, but I cannot see you right now. I think okay. I'm okay. So I think her connection. Can you see her? Yomi? Yeah, I think we have some problems about connection. Or it's about me. Yeah, it happens. You know, it's. Okay, she left and let us invite her once again. Sorry. I cannot find her. Maybe she needs to join the conversation once again, and then we can invite. So sorry, you know, it's all about connection. I think something happened on her side, but I hope you are enjoying by our conversation so far. She is really such an amazing woman, actually. Now I'm reading her book. I highly recommend everyone to read this book because it gives you really different aspect, and I also listen her podcasts. Actually, I have more questions to ask her, and I really want you to hear her answers, her experiences, her opinions. She's a really nice voice, very successful young woman. I mean, okay, yes. Yes, I think she will be here in few seconds. I accept her.
I am so
yes.
sorry.
Yes,
my phone is a mess. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. You know, it happens. It's very normal. I mean,
thank you for your patience. I was thinking today, I was like, I literally said it today. I was like, I need a new phone. And I was hoping that it would like survive for today, but the battery sometimes just goes. It's horrendous. So yeah, thanks for your patience.
Yeah, of course. I'm sure you are very busy and you are with your phone all the time. So of course, that battery is not enough for you. Yeah. So, okay, I was asking you, as well as having a number of published books under your belt, you also contribute to many leading publications like The Guardian,
Right.
British Vogue. Could you please tell us more about how you juggle it all and come up with different topic ideas to write about every month? What gives you the inspiration?
That's such a good question because it's something I'm asking myself because honestly, when I was younger, let's say uni, so I'm 29 now, I probably started writing in a real kind of capacity about 10 years ago when I was like 19 for my university paper. And I had so much to say about everything. Like there was nothing I was on the fence about. Everything. I had an opinion and I had a strong opinion. I was like, I think this, I think that. And that's why I started contributing to my uni paper because I was super opinionated. I wanted to be heard. And it wasn't for anything other than I had opinions and I wanted other people to know what I thought. And I wanted to know what they thought of what I thought. So I was like writing a lot and I started a blog and everything. Now, 10 years later, I think it's become increasingly difficult I mean, there's some times where I feel so strongly about something, it just pours out. But I think because of the way the internet is, and we have this real knee-jerk culture, and we want an instant response to everything. So something really nuanced and complicated can happen. And instead of us sitting and thinking and deciding what we think about it, we're like, we need a piece, somebody write something on this now. And journalists are pushed often, especially younger journalists, are pushed into responding immediately to things without really deciding what they think. So for a long time, initially, it was social media that like helped me generate ideas. But now I actually find it easier to write about things away from social media. Because I think the problem with social media, and I hate, because I feel like I'm always moaning about it, but it's such a double-edged sword. It can be an amazing thing, but it can be such a limiting thing too, is that the thing about it is, you think one thing and then you go on social media and everyone thinks something else, and then you're like, oh no, like, should I think what I think? And sometimes that can be good because you might be ignorant and then you've seen all these tweets and people are correcting you. You've got these infographics and they're being like, you know what, you thought this, but this is what you should think. And it's like, oh, okay, I'm informed now. But other times it's like you think one thing, and rather than really engage with whether you agree with what everyone's saying, you kind of just toe a line and like jump on board with what everyone else thinks. And sometimes I'd read pieces from other very talented writers that I felt were just an amalgamation of what everyone else had tweeted and what everyone, like, what you were supposed to think. And I became very conscious of doing that because I like to know why I think what I think. So if I have an opinion, even if it's wrong, at least I'll know why I think it, as opposed to it being like, I went on Twitter and I saw this, so I think that's what I think now. So I think it's been, for me, spending time slightly more offline in the real world with people who I respect, who are smart, but have different opinions to me sometimes have the same opinions, and discussing it has honestly helped me generate a lot of ideas. Because for a few years it was difficult because I felt like everyone was writing the same thing about the same thing. And I was like, I don't want to write something. I mean, sounds a bit like privileged, but I'm like, I don't want to write something just to pay my bills. I want it to add to a discourse. I want it to add to a conversation. I want it to be different. I don't want to just regurgitate. So yeah, I think now looking at my life, looking at the people around me, I've found it actually easier to write about different things by coming away from social media and realizing there's more to talk about than what's trending, essentially.
Yeah. And there must be really nice people around you then who really inspire you. And there are lots of stories and also having different opinions. I mean, it's nice because you need to, I mean, some people need to hear your voice also, your opinion. Maybe it's just a little encouragement for them to, to say something. Yeah.
100% I agree, because I think obviously within reason, like I don't have any friends that are hateful. All my friends are fantastic people, but we don't all think the exact same thing on things. We broadly in agreement about most things, but sometimes it's good as well, because if I speak to someone and they're my friend and I trust their judgment, I trust where they're coming from, and they disagree with me, it gives me pause and I think, okay, am I certain I think what I think because I respect this person's opinion? I had a conversation like this yesterday about something, and I really respected the person's judgment. So it made me think, like, am I wrong? And then we had a back and forth about it, and I still maintained my opinion, but it was healthy, I think, to have that discussion and then still decide we disagree, but respectfully. And it just, in my mind, it helps generate and sharpen ideas, really, than echo chambers.
Yeah. And yes, you offer some great advice on how to write a book, and have had some wonderful guests on your podcast with Elizabeth. Also, I was running this morning and I was listening one of your podcasts, and I was laughing, and people were like, in this, it was like 6:30 a.m. and they were like, "Are you laughing? Why are you happy like this?" But I really like your vibe, and I really enjoy how you two discuss, and share your journey. I mean, about writing those books. And yes, and what would be your top 3 pitching tips to budding writers who want to get published for the first time?
My top 3 tips. Firstly, I would say don't be afraid of writing for publications that aren't as established. So I think most people I know are like, how do I get into Vogue? How do I get into the Guardian? I'm like, I didn't get into the Guardian for like years. I didn't get into Vogue for years. Like, I really feel like the barrier to entry right now is so low, in a way that it probably won't be forever. Like, anyone, like, if you apply to write for like a platform that's like maybe got a small following and they reject you, and then a platform with an even smaller following rejects you, you still can write on Medium, you can still write a blog, which is incredible, because that wasn't the case for years. Like, you can always get your work out there. So I feel like sometimes people feel like, oh, if it's not Vogue, I don't want to write it, it's not worthwhile. And I'm like, that's not the case. Like, everyone starts somewhere. So I would definitely say, like, being unafraid to make a start is definitely like, and it to be anywhere is a really big thing. I always maintain that people should be gracious and polite, because so often I feel like I get, especially when I was starting out, I got a lot of repeat work because I was polite and I filed on time and I was easy to work with. Like, that's not to say I can't write. It's just that alongside being able to write, like, people knew they were going to get copy on time. They knew I was going to be straightforward. They knew I wasn't going to be a diva about certain edits. If I like had issues regarding edits, I was very like clear with it and just like, this is my problem. But I wasn't like, rude about it, because I think a lot of writers have a lot of ego because we think that like what we're saying is so important. And like, I think what I'm saying is like, yeah, I feel like it's important, but at the same time, like, I'm not curing COVID. Like, it's not that deep. I think sometimes people take themselves a bit seriously. So I feel like being polite, being gracious is always really important. And I always say, like, as much as I just told everyone to get off Twitter, get on Twitter if you're looking for contacts. Like, you don't have to be an active user of the website, but people are constantly saying like, oh, I want to find the, features editor at Vogue. And I'm like, I literally found so many emails from literally typing in like Vogue features editor, like in 2017 or something. Like, I would literally like search for people's names and their ats. And so often people on Twitter, they're as desperate to receive commissions as you are desperate to be commissioned. So they'll put out all these calls and they're saying, hey, I'm really looking for someone to write about Love Island. And you can say, hey, I like, and you know what I mean? You can just directly apply to the tweet, or usually they put their email on the tweet. So yeah, I just think it's about being, as much as I hate social media, you can really use it in the right way and you can get a lot of information and contacts from it. So those would be my top 3 tips.
Yeah. And you and Elizabeth have recently announced you will be releasing your debut children's book, The Offline Diaries, this November, and you said you don't know any kids, by the way. So
child, I know one, which is my godson, and he's 2. I don't know any kids.
So can you tell us more about this? I mean, how did you decide to do this?
Yeah, man, it was a journey, because like, honestly, gosh, it's been years in the making, because when we pull together Slaying Your Lane, people would always say like, should my child read it? And I'd be like, no, like I could lie for book sales and say, yeah, this is perfectly appropriate for an 8-year-old, but it's not, like, because there's swearing in it, not much, but like the themes are adult, not in terms of adult in like a scandalous way, but kids won't be able to grapple necessarily with like concepts like white privilege and misogynoir and microaggressions. It's about workplace and stuff. So we were kind of like the ages 14, 15 up. But then people would always be like, but we really want like a kids version. So we did the journal, and the journal is far more accessible. Like anyone can read the journal, and it feels a lot more like, like it definitely feels like you could have an actual child read that and they get something from it. But even then, it's still geared at people who've lived life essentially. So then, we kept having conversations about kids iteration, and then our publisher was essentially just like, the incredible Helen Garner Williams at Fourth Estate. It was like, you really do, or did she say that with the journal? I can't remember, but she was asking us to do lots of different things, and she was like, we really think you should do a journal, not a journal, a kids book. And yeah, we had that conversation, and we were like, well, we want to make sure that our kids book is something that has diverse characters at the front, but isn't as heavy in terms of the topics, and isn't as like, because I think the thing about a young person reading a book like Stay in Your Lane, being completely honest, someone very young, is that I grew up in a world and in a family where my parents basically told me I could do anything I wanted, and that I would be incredible regardless of being a woman, regardless of being Black, regardless of my background. I think had I not grown up like that, I might have internalized some ideas about the limitations that my identity placed on me, and I'm very grateful I didn't. And I worry sometimes about this generation that's constantly being told that, like, statistically you're more likely to get this, and you're less likely to do that. I think people can internalize it and feel like, well, shit, there's no point in me even trying because, most people like me don't make it here. So we really didn't want to have those themes in the kids' book. We were like, we want the kids' book to just be pure optimism, joy, and focus on themes that are like, we're gonna definitely have our main characters be diverse, be Black girls like we are, but we were also like, we want the themes to be slightly more universal. So what do kids, and this is the real question, what do kids care about? I was like, I don't know. So we had to do a lot of research, and kids aren't thinking about systemic racism. They're thinking about friendship, and it's such small things like, friends are like the biggest part of any like 11-year-old girl's world. It's about like, oh god, this person didn't invite me to her birthday. That is like considered the like biggest like issue of any child's like lifetime during that period. And like things like fitting in and like family, and like now increasingly with this generation, social media. So we were like, we need to make sure that we have themes that like touch on bullying, and like what it feels like when one friend has a higher social status than the other, when you add social media into the mix. Because obviously I grew up pretty analog, like I had social media, but I was of the Bebo like social media platform generation. I didn't use it. So I had to really kind of do some research, we both did, into getting into that mind frame and understanding what kids are really talking about today, which was very interesting and different, but enlightening for sure.
Yeah. It's really such an interesting journey for you. I mean, I'm sure you will discover many different aspects. I don't know, now the new generation also.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I really wonder, just our old audience, what will be your next step? I'm sure there are many more projects, I'm sure.
Yeah, so kids book coming out in November, which has been crazy, like a crazy process, because Elizabeth wrote chapters from the character Shanice's perspective, and I wrote them from Ade's perspective. Those are the two protagonists that are best friends, so that was the journey. So very much looking forward to that coming out in November. And then I've been working on a debut fiction novel, which has been a process that I was doing primarily through lockdown, but it's been quite a journey because it's a different, I write mainly non-fiction, so it's been exercising different muscles that I haven't really used and have remained like latent since secondary school, really. So yeah, that's been a like project, and lots of bits and bobs. Like I do a lot of hosting, so I've got lots of incredible like hosting things coming up. a few like things like that, a few panels and stuff. But yeah, just plenty more writing, still doing my columns, and so pretty much the same old stuff except the novel.
Yeah, but I definitely, stay tuned for your new projects. I mean, so excited. And thank you so much. I mean, it was such a great and absolute pleasure for us to have you here with us today.
Thank you.
I'm so lucky because we have this platform and we can find this chance to, connect with you.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for your patience with my terrible
No, it
phone.
wasn't really. I really enjoyed, and hopefully we will meet face to face one day. Yeah. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We will be uploading the video on IGTV as well as our website, so you can watch our conversation with Yomi whenever you want. And we will be back next month with another incredible woman. So stay tuned to know who our next guest will be. And yes, thank you so much. I mean, have a nice weekend. And
You too. Have a lovely
take
one.
care. Bye. So we need to